Please welcome Red Hat Vice President of Customer Experience and Engagement, Marco Bill-Peter, and Red Hat Vice President and Chief Technologist of the Office of Technology, Chris Wright.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. It's a hard act to follow. I was always trying to crack a joke about he needs more space, but I had to get it out of here. So, welcome back. Last year we joked around that I resemble or sound like Schwarzenegger. This year I actually brought my Terminator buddy, Chris. You should have seen the fight over the click on the back. Anyways, exciting past few days. I actually had so many good conversation with clients, with Red Hatters, with partners. It was an awesome, awesome week so far. What I liked a lot is the energy and the passion, and energy, passion for open source, for technology, for our wedding that we had. It's so much passion here. Chris, how has the week been for you?
Totally agree, Marco. I mean, I love the summit. It's a great annual event where we bring together Red Hatters, community members, partners, customers, and we're talking together about how are we taking these technology advances and innovation that we're finding in the upstream communities, harnessing that energy and bringing it into solving problems. And we're learning from each other. It's the power of collaboration theme this week, and that's exactly what I've been experiencing. It's been a really great experience so far.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. And like a lot of these customers, doing this innovation and really making these decisions, right? And it's decisions that are so important and impactful. I think a lot of us learned decisions we made 10 years ago, they have a lasting impact, and sometimes they're good decisions. But what I've seen this week is a lot of customers thinking about, we got to make these decisions, and they will have lasting impact, but they consider us like, how can we stay agile, which is pretty cool.
That's right. So we see here a 10-year history of Innovation Award winners. So talk about lasting impact. Some of these early award winners are still working on the infrastructure that they've built, this innovative platform. This year, we're here to celebrate the 2016 award winners, and great stories year after year. This year is really no different.
Yeah, and you look at Red Hat, what is our mission, right? We build open source software, build a subscription around it. The success of our customers, the success of you, is really our core mission, right? I mean, our model is very clear in that, the commitment to open source, but the commitment as well for you. And speaking of these innovation awards, I think these submissions get better and better, more innovative every year. And the other interesting part is, if you look at these winners behind you, I stayed in touch with some of these winners over the years. I think it's amazing. I call it, they break through the innovation barrier, and they keep innovating. So it's not like a one-time shot and then they stand still again. It's like you see these customers proving this for years and years. It's really cool, Chris.
So the 2016 Innovation Award winners are not picked just by Red Hat. This is picked by a panel of judges, including analysts, journalists, and executives from Red Hat. Marco, you want to tell us a little more about this year's Innovation Award winners?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. So throughout this week, you got introduced to these winners, these 6 winners here, and hopefully you had a chance to actually vote for them. And before we, today we want to kind of highlight their challenges and their context. I think it's really important to talk about the context as well, so to make sure you understand some of the story. And before we highlight the Innovation Award winners, why don't we hear from them directly what innovation means to them? And so we play a video for that.
Innovation really means having the courage to do something that others haven't before.
Innovation is about delivering creativity.
The addition of something new ideas, new methods, new products and technologies.
And to be able to deliver that to the marketplace faster than our competition.
It's also in the way that we engage with our customers and we deliver projects and services to them.
Innovation is what changes barriers. It is what opens new horizons.
If we had not changed the technology, we would have been just doing something which the people are not interested in. It's vital that we continue to innovate so that our customers stay with us. We need to continue to deliver value and make sure that we are helping them to deliver to their customers.
If we don't continue to evolve and take on challenges, we will get left behind. But that's where I look to the future, and I can't be any more excited, because innovation is when you take this idea, you cultivate it, and you make the world a better place afterwards. And that's what we're doing here, and that's what we've done.
I really like the last sentence that we heard here is that you have an idea, right, and you make it your own. And the idea, and you might be forced in a context, and you got to break out of that. And I think this is really interesting. How do you make that idea, make it to something that you can solve your business problem? Now, how does Red Hat think about innovation, in your opinion, Chris?
Well, innovation starts, there's a core of technology, and a big part of what we're doing is building this technology in the upstream open source communities. But it's not just about technology. It's about people, it's about partnerships, relationships. This is where we bring together our customers, the upstream communities, developers. We're really building a next generation infrastructure and technology by first starting understanding what our customer use cases and requirements are, bringing those requirements to the upstream development communities in a way that, as developers in these communities, we're translating those requirements into a language that's understandable to the upstream communities. Working together with those communities to refine to something that is maintainable, sustainable in the upstream project, bringing that back and delivering that to our customers as part of this next generation technology or infrastructure. It's these building blocks where we're tapping into the innovative engine of the upstream communities. And it's this open source development model that we believe is the best way to do innovation. And one of the things that I think is really interesting here is we're working across a broad set of industries and recognizing a large diversity of problems. And bringing the diverse problems and the diverse use cases and developers from different communities together actually builds a stronger community and helps the development process sort of refine the architecture into something that's sustainable, maintainable, and agile, capable of adapting to problems that we haven't even thought of yet. So diversity is a pretty important thing. What do you think about this year's award winners?
Well, speaking of diversity, right, we have a lot of diversity, just from the geographies, right? We have customers from the Americas, we got customers from Europe, we got customers from Asia, and we got customers from England. But we also got customers, obviously, look at that, different industries. But in many cases, they face similar challenges. And we dug into this story. It's great time that we have, right? But then some of the themes we heard is, one is actually popping out all the time is scalability, right? How do you scale, right? There's like agility and scalability is a hot topic, right? The transforming a traditional business, you'll hear it, right? That's a hot topic, right? I mean, you can, you heard JPL as well talking about how do you transform businesses, right? Consolidation of data. Data is everywhere, right? And how do you consolidate, or how do you get data together? It's a big theme that we hear from these 6 clients. Got to be secure, right? It can't be like everybody's worried about security these days, right? And in this context, with these themes, how do you apply this rapid innovation? And I run an organization called Customer Experience and Engagement at Red Hat. A lot of the support stuff is in my organization. We see as well how we need to adjust to the demands from our customers, right? And that can be in different channels. You want to interact with us in this way, in the phone. You want to interact with us in electronic means or maybe social media, different means, right? And thank God, Red Hat has a pretty agile IT, so we can kind of adjust fairly quickly on this. But in many cases, many customers have like these boat anchors, right, from like the 60s and 70s or 80s, right? And how do you change with these legacy systems around it? The other thing, I think that you realize more, and you hear that actually throughout the whole week, is customer experience. It matters, right? How do you actually keep your customers engaged? How do you keep your customers there and don't disrupt your customers, right? speaking of a kind of this, let's go into first example. It's a very good example of a innovation award winner is Atos, a French IT company, I guess today a global IT company, consulting company, very respected. And in this case, they worked with the UK government. I think that's still correct, UK government, right? They worked with the UK government to kind of like, hey, we have a lot of data. How do we keep that in sync? And you probably go and interact with the government as well, right? And I always go in the government office. I walk out, smile. There's a lot of joy interacting with the government, right? And so the UK government realized that, hey, how do we make that easier? And give you a simple example, tell us once. You have a life event going on, you change your name or like another life event. How can you go to one government entity like the tax department and tell them once, hey, I changed my name, and the other departments know it? It's very simple, right? But in this case, it meant that they had to, in this case, trying to forward here, sorry about that. In this case, it meant that they had to work different entities, different government entities, right, to actually get them to collaborate and changing data around, right? And they chose an interesting approach, in my opinion, Atos, right? Think about that, right? There's different government groups in the UK. You as an IT company get asked, well, why don't you collaborate with these different groups and make something happen, right? That sounds like a big transformation project that we've all seen in every company that failed very, very quickly. So Atos chose, first of all, they partnered with Red Hat. That's extremely smart already, right? But then they also took a pragmatic approach, as in really like, okay, we want to build a small POC and proof of concept, right? And from a proof of concept, move into like a software as a service. Be very agile and innovative. And also from a business perspective, right? They didn't say to the UK government, oh, give us a few $1 million, we do it for you. They actually chose like a pay-per-use model so that if this application really works for the government, for the citizens, then they will pay, otherwise not. I think it's an awesome example, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, well, it's clearly successful. I mean, we've been seeing the crowds of enthusiasts outside all the government agencies on TV recently. But what I really like about this pay-per-use model is that itself is innovative. I mean, we're talking about changing a way that we're doing business together between Atos and the UK government. That's providing software as a service, very much a modern concept. What the Atos team has done here is build up a messaging infrastructure using Fuse, core base of RHEL and satellite, some great input from the Red Hat consulting team to build a capability to message between agencies. So rather than having to fax, phone call, maybe even print out and courier from agency to agency, these agencies can directly share data amongst themselves across this messaging bus. And one of the things that's really important, as Marco highlighted it earlier, is security. So each of these agencies have sensitive data. You really need to ensure that there's the proper rules around how data is being shared across the different agencies. So, the challenge, the tension here is how do you share information without compromising security? The end result of this combined technology platform is that millions of citizens' records can be synchronized across this whole shared pool of data, and that really has the ability to impact the entire UK citizenship. Pretty impressive.
It's impressive, yeah. Well, let's stay in the UK and let's talk a little bit about Paddy Power Betfair. And Paddy Power Betfair, the name or the company just was created this year out of a merger between the two entities. It really, Chris, I don't know if you knew, but in early my career, I was consulting with a horse racing company. And so when I heard about Paddy Power Betfair, I was kind of like, oh, this is interesting, really interesting industry, right? The betting industry, right? But then also in understanding more about Betfair is really like it's not just betting me against the bank or me against the company. It's like an exchange, right? I can bet against Chris, right? We can take bets on topics, right? Like will Scotland leave the EU or something like that, right? You can set bets on very strange things. And so they invented the betting exchange. And that's how they refer to themselves. It's an exchange, right? It's massive volumes of transactions rapidly. They got to rapidly execute them securely. It's a really interesting example. And now, in their innovation award that they presented to us, think about the context, right? You're running an exchange, so it's a 24/7 operation. At the same time, you have events like the horse race on a Saturday afternoon, right? The Grand National in the UK. All of a sudden, you have spikes. So you operate 24/7. You got to be stable. You can't have any outages. At the same time, you be prepared for any spikes, right? So that's what they were asking, right? It's like we need a modern, innovative, agile system, right? And it got to be agile, as in also timing is critical, right? You don't want to bet on a horse and the horse already finished while your bet hasn't been processed, right? It's really, I hope you understand the context, right? This is really interesting environment. Really, agility is important, right? And they were looking for building a foundation for the future as well, so that they can add more business innovation. How did they do it from a technical perspective?
I'm still stuck trying to picture you with a polka-dotted jersey as a horse jockey, or maybe your consulting was more baseball bat collecting the bet debts. Clearly, the agility here is the game changer for Betfair, and they built up a solution, the I2 program, next generation infrastructure, using OpenStack, and really focused on how can they quickly build and deliver their applications, adapting to the business requirements coming in from the consumers and the bettors in the exchange. Something that's really cool about this is it's a modern modern design where a CI/CD pipeline is kind of a critical component to delivering the change, separating your software from your infrastructure. The result of all of this is what I find so spectacular is building up this new infrastructure. They're able to process 7 million transactions a day. So this is a massive number of transactions, on the order with stock exchanges. Of course, as Marco mentioned, the timing is really important. So these transactions are completed in under a second. You got large number of active users, so easily 1 million active users. And one of the things that we learned from the Paddy Power Betfair team is they are proud members of the Billionaires Club. So they are capable of processing 2.7 billion API calls a day, which puts them in a fairly exclusive club with other members like Netflix, Facebook, Twitter. So it's a really impressive technology solution and platform, allowing them to scale, maintain availability, and work to those demands.
It's pretty impressive. It's pretty impressive. Well, let's stay with exchanges and let's travel to India, actually. And the Bombay Stock Exchange, or as it is known today, BSE, was founded in 1875, right? That's pretty impressive. It's the first stock exchange in Asia, or was the first stock exchange in Asia. Today, I think they have like over 5,000, probably by now 6,000 listed companies, right? And you can imagine over the last few decades in India, right, that having a platform to raise capital for a lot of the startups in India, it's pretty cool, right? And they've done a good job in maintaining that. Now, they also realized a few things, and they came to Red Hat and other software company to kind of say, we got a good, stable environment, but hey, we want to innovate. We want to become the fastest stock exchange in the world. That's pretty cool, right? And you think, it's like, what does that mean and why? Why is that important to them, right? And if you listen to BSE, right, you hear the context, right? Over the last 2 decades, they actually struggled with a proprietary solution, a great proprietary solution that was very, very stable. And they had that, but they didn't have any headroom left. And to change that was just, that was the big challenge. But the headroom was like, they actually were nervous on a normal day, just like that they would hit actually the ceiling, right? And so it wasn't just like that they were nervous about the system, but they couldn't also innovate. It was like, we can't get more business, right? Because every time we add business, it's actually reducing the headroom. Now, they had to kind of modernizing, right? That modernizing the core. You probably heard that throughout the week, right? Modernizing the core, changing the exchange. However, they also kept in mind that, well, if we just change the core and tell all the investment brokers, all the clients around it, hey, we put in a new system, you got to change your APIs. That probably wouldn't fly because they would say, well, there's other exchanges in Asia, we can use them, and we don't have to change our workflow. So they were very cognizant of, hey, we can't disrupt our users. And I think that's something really important to keep in mind, isn't it, Chris?
And definitely, as an engineer, you can appreciate the challenge of changing core infrastructure while maintaining external APIs, so that you're not disrupting users. So that alone is an amazing feat. I think one of the things that's interesting about BSE is, you talk about the boat anchor earlier. This is a proprietary solution that initially included proprietary hardware. So they started with a very open mind and creating open systems and using open source to build up this open platform. So starting from commodity x86 servers, taking kind of a hardware-centric approach because latency matters in this environment, they've built up a new infrastructure based on RHEL, kind of a hardware-centric but modular design, similar to what you might find in a cloud-type application, so that you have the ability to scale out independent services, lifecycle services independently of one another, really giving them that kind of scale capacity and new headroom. So I think it's really interesting to see the results of that are, first of all, before they embarked on this journey, a transaction, the latency of a single transaction was measured on the order of 10 milliseconds. Today, they're able to process transactions in 6 microseconds, so 1,000 times reduction in latency, and that's spectacular, making the BSE the fastest stock exchange in the world. Time is money in this environment. Exchange, this reduction in latency means they can process more transactions. So they've gone from the ability to do, say, 10 million orders a day to over 400 million orders a day. Spectacular growth in the number of transactions, which has enabled them to enter new businesses. So, you go back in time a few years, they had 0% market share in the derivatives market, and now they've been able to move themselves up to sort of 40-50% market share in this new market. So expanding business, additional headroom, and doing all of this while reducing the cost of their infrastructure, 66% reduction in hardware costs. So this is a pretty powerful combination of open source, open systems, building agile infrastructure to really meet their growing business demands. Cool example.
It was great. I visited the BSC a few weeks ago, and just seeing them, how they manage the system, and actually seeing the load, you saw that, hey, they were not running on the head, on the ceiling. It was awesome to see. Very professional. Now let's go to the US actually, and let's talk a little bit about Acuity System. And Acuity Systems, when I heard that name, I didn't know that brand. I don't know if you knew, Chris, but it was very interesting. I actually had the chance to meet actually Paul from Acuity. He even told me I cleaned up this week. I don't know what that means. But so Acuity Systems is a partner in the DC area, and in this case, they actually worked with GSA, with the General Services Administration, the procurement arm of the federal government in the US. You can imagine they buy a lot of stuff, right? Lots of stuff, right? They have a lot of data about the stuff they buy, and they have a lot of data about how that stuff being used, where it's used, etc. And so GSA actually called up on Acuity Systems because Acuity Systems has done a similar problem or solved a similar problem for them. And what they wanted to do is like, okay, we got all this data around us. How do we make better decisions? How does GSA make better decisions based on the data? And so Acuity helped the GSA to bring together data sources, and we're talking about over 100 data sources, like they call it over 190 data sets, different warehouses. How do they bring them together securely, you can imagine, right, into one cloud image? They call it the cloud image, and you can run business decision, business rules on top of it, right, so that you can use the analytics to make actually these smarter decisions. For me, it sounds similar than Atos with the UK government, Chris, doesn't it?
Yeah, there are some similarities. So if you look at what they've done, they've built up a data pool, a capability for sharing data across different government agencies. difference here is they're treating it as a data virtualization problem. So using the data virtualization and Fuse products from Red Hat, they've built up this infrastructure that allows them to share data across the agencies. Again, security is important, so understanding how your interactions with other agencies is really critical. This is something that the team is really proud of, is they've built up a central data analytics as a service platform for the federal government. So this is not just a little bit of sharing of information between a few agencies. This is a very massive undertaking. And one of the things that I think is particularly interesting here, talk about the power of collaboration. Bringing agencies and bringing data into this pool is a form of collaboration, and what they're seeing is as they add more data into this pool, they're able to make better decisions. It's a form of collaboration that's adding value, and this to me is really kind of the cool part of recognizing how we're taking open source technologies and enabling businesses to share their information and actually make better decisions. Ultimately, combined, this is enabling the federal government to make more intelligent decisions, not based on reports that are run once a week or once a month, but this is very quick, near real-time type responses. Another thing that I think is really interesting here is the U.S. government has an open source first mandate, so they're looking for technologies, where you can satisfy a problem with an open source technology, that's going to be the preferred solution. So combined open source technologies, collaboration through sharing of data, the end result is better business decisions.
It's pretty cool to see two similar challenges with two different solutions, right?
Yeah.
It's very cool, really cool. Well, let's travel to Europe, actually, and to a company called Amadeus. Again, probably a brand name, well, you heard it several times this week, but it's maybe a brand name that you don't recognize every day. But if you book the plane ticket, you book the cruise tour, you book the hotel rental car, you interfaced indirectly with Amadeus. Really cool company all over the world. And they came to us basically with a challenge to actually, we need a way to introduce solutions very quickly for our customers. And customers in this case, airlines, railways, cruise lines, etc., right? And they needed a solution, a platform to actually, we got to introduce software much quicker for our partners so we can be more agile and the customers can be more agile, right? And so really, how do we react quickly to customer demands? And in this case, I think what I think is really cool to highlight is the partnership between Red Hat and Amadeus. And the partnership was focused, or is focused on, is like, well, there's the PaaS, the OpenShift solution, right? The operating system with Red Hat Enterprise Linux, but then also the orchestration, right? And so it was a kind of like, okay, we work on this part, we collaborate on this part, really a work together to actually make this new platform, right? And these new platforms that they can introduce new applications for their customers. It allowed them, very similar to BSC, very similar to the other examples, to get into new line of businesses. It's really cool, right? And they really embraced open source, right, Chris?
Yeah, I think that's a kind of a defining characteristic of the Amadeus team. So they built up the Amadeus Cloud services using OpenShift. With this platform, they're looking for flexibility, agility, the ability to increase performance, reduce latency, respond to those same peak loads that we've talked about in other examples, and also introduce new application development, responding to kind of customer or consumer demand. I learned something new in talking to the Amadeus team about a concept called the look-to-book ratio. So what we're seeing in the travel industry is a change in how people buy tickets. So you roll back in time, and it was kind of dominated by professional travel agencies. Today, it's Marco and I hammering at our keyboards trying to get the best deal on tickets to get to the Red Hat Summit. What that means is every transaction, the precursor to every transaction is a large number of queries. So initially, they had a look-to-book ratio of something like 10 to 1. With novices looking for tickets, that ratio jumps up to 1,000 to 1, and that's something that puts a huge strain on their infrastructure. So they built this Amadeus Cloud Services platform to enable to absorb that kind of load. You know, they've gone into production and they've been able to absorb that 20-fold increase with some existing customers. So that in and of itself, I think, is really cool. One thing that distinguishes Amadeus in this innovation award winner lineup is their focus on not just open source technologies, but collaboration and really getting involved in the open source communities. So they've gone working with Red Hat and gone all the way to taking code changes that are important for their businesses, bringing them to communities and committing those changes upstream. So if you go to something like the Docker project or the Kubernetes project, you'll find Amadeus engineers making changes there, which I think is a really cool part of the Amadeus story.
And I think that the look-to-book ratio, or like the example that we heard, is like, it's not just like, hey, I want to fly to the Red Hat Summit in San Francisco. It's like, I want to go scuba diving. And it's like, where is scuba diving good right now, right? It's probably not Portland right now.
Probably not Portland.
But speaking of Portland, right, if you want to take a bus or a train to Portland, that's where Genfair, our next Innovation Award winner, comes in place. They've been, again, maybe not a brand you know, but probably you interfaced with Genfair. You saw it in the video earlier, right, that with the machines that you actually pay the fares for the bus or the train, right? And so you probably interfaced with them. This Innovation Award for Genfair is, in my opinion, a great, great example of really digital transformation. Put yourself into the shoe of Genfair, right? You saw the machines, right? And they probably know that machines, like giving coins for a bus fare, that's probably not going to happen in 10 years, right? I mean, today you probably pay with your phone, right? And so it's like, how do you move a business from a very traditional hardware business over to a different business, right, that has more flexibility? And so Genfair came to Red Hat, right, to basically, hey, how can we actually move our software and not just create software, but how do we move our software into something in the cloud that is useful for their clients, right? They call it the Genfair Link, and basically a cloud platform for fare management. And today it supports smart cards, RFID cards, the phone, mobile, etc. Right? It's really cool, right? And they came to Red Hat Consulting basically, hey, how do we want to move our software into the cloud, and we also want to create a multi-tenant scalable architecture. So it's not just move your software into the cloud and then you just instantiate for every different client, right? So how do you create that multi-tenant architecture? And I think, again, it's building the foundation for the future, right? You build a foundation for new businesses that come online, right? It's a good example, Chris.
That's right. So one of the things that I think is cool here is you are, as Marco described, taking a very hardware-centric environment and moving it to a software-centric world. That is very much the digital transformation. Taking the applications that they had, which ran as just a small number of services, working together with Red Hat Consulting to build up a new application running on RHEL and EAP in the cloud. So now we have a cloud application. It gives them the ability to scale their application to meet the needs of their customers, and even enter into new markets where maybe some smaller municipalities that couldn't afford that more expensive hardware footprint have access to this functionality through the cloud. So this is a great example of the modernizing your business, moving and changing to kind of really accommodate the modern world that we live in today. Also looking at it from the point of view of their customers who are trying to understand where their fleets are, what the ridership looks like now, and built with a future in mind where IoT is a part of this. You've got sensors on each of the different buses. You've got people paying with their devices. So this is really a great example of modernizing, bringing you from a hardware world to a software world, and ultimately, flip ahead. There you go. Ultimately, giving them the ability to really embrace this modern environment. So I think it's a great example, Genfair.
That's good. So, talking about these 6 winners, right? And Chris and I dug into the stories, and we really got excited, as I said, about the innovation itself, but then also the context, right? And it's not just the IT transformation. We heard it throughout the week, right? Sometimes it's not just IT, it's also how do you transform the business, how do you transform the people, right? And it's really interesting to see, right? The IT leadership role, if it's the CIO, if it's the IT director, if it's a team lead, the role is changing, right? You got to lead to transformation. I think we've seen it in all the examples, right? Their role has become not just as in worrying about development or IT, it's like, how do you bring this together? How do you bring IT, development teams, and businesses together? Now, let's take one last look in a video about these 6 winners before we announce the 2016 Innovator of the Year.
Okay, roll 1, scene 1, take 3.
Atos, application development. Acuity Systems, accelerate, integrate, automate. Amadeus, cloud. BSE, infrastructure. Paddy Power Betfair, modernize. Genfair, transform.
Let's give a round of applause for our Innovation Award winners. All great stories. All these six stories are amazing stories, and we enjoy to work with our customers, but also with our internal teams to really understand these stories. Now, you chose the Innovator of the Year, and actually even closed the envelope. So, and the winner of the 2016 Innovator of the Year is
Amadeus. Well done. That was cool.
That was awesome.
Yeah. So, our customers are the proof. The technology is here. What are you waiting for? Let's innovate. Thank you.
Thank you.